Oh, hey Ben, how are you today?
I am doing marvelous, Charlie. And yourself?
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. It's the last Friday of the week. So I'm super excited for the weekend. Who's not? So, the first question that I ask everybody is, how do you like your coffee in the morning?
There is the question that no one's ever asked me online. I've been doing this for 12 or 14 years. No one's ever asked me about coffee. I like my coffee black with a splash of brown sugar.
Oh, nice. Any particular type of black coffee? Any particular bean?
I'm going to be the horrible person that everybody says. I do the Kirkland pods from Cougar. What is it called? I've got those little pods that I just drink, and it works just fine. I'm not one of these particular people and very fussy about my coffee. I like it hot and black.
Hot, black, ready, quick, easy, on the go.
You got it.
We're busy people, so we need that like efficiency.
I need the hit. I just need the quick caffeine hit. Let's just go that way.
I've always been you. I've always said I don't like the base brand brackets. I'm not, but then after a certain level, I could drink anything essentially. Yeah. But what I did discover recently is I'm a big Illy fan. Turns out I'm a big Illy brand fan, and I'll only drink espressos or double espressos if it's Illy Italian coffee. Slightly snobbish of me, I know, but I'll take it.
Well, I'll give you a quick story, then we can get going. It says my stepfather is a coffee snob. He is absolutely a coffee snob. He buys two different beans, and he has them particularly ground, and then he has them mixed in with each other. Then he has them, he grinds them himself, and then he makes the coffee and all that kind of stuff. He was over one time, and I hadn't had a chance to go to Costco to buy my normal pods. So I went to Superstore, just where they had got their generic, run-of-the-mill, yellow label, coffee pods. And I fed him that drip coffee, and he just gushed about how good the coffee was. And my wife wouldn't let me bring him the pod. She wouldn't. It was awesome. It was awesome because I just sat there and went, you're this big coffee snob, and I fed you 12 cents a pod coffee, and you were just fine with it.
Oh, I love it. I love it. You got it. But I will say manufacturing has got better over the years, and
absolutely.
Now we can get delicious coffee at a cheaper price.
Absolutely.
Now, we said we're busy people working away all the time, and we needed something quick and easy. So what is it that you do, and why do you do it?
Okay, what I do is I do internal communications for mid to large size companies, and we also do some work with some enterprise companies as well. But it's all about how do we drive change, mission, vision, purpose, values, and culture within a company? How do we get people from where they are to where they need to be?
Seems simple enough.
It is. Very, very complex when you actually get into it.
As bad as say.
To say it's pretty simple.
Now, I think everything is simple on the top level, but when we get, like you said, what we're going to do today in this podcast is we're going to get into the nitty gritty of all of those little different things. Now, before we get into those little undertones, layers, I want us to keep it simple. What is effective communication strategies?
Okay, my view of communication is it's not about talking. It's about being listened to, understood, valued, engaged with, and enable people to internalize, recall, and retell your story. It's about the action. It's about people understanding what you have to say and doing something with it. We can talk till we're blue in the face, and a lot of us do. I can't tell you how many leaders I had to. I told them this. Why don't they understand? Because you're not speaking in their language, and you're not speaking in ways that's relevant to them, that enables them to understand what you want them to do, and they don't understand what needs to happen next. So to me, that's what communication is. It's not as much speaking, it's about being understood.
Guess let's dig into that, that CEO then, who's, he's got a bit of a pain there of going, why is nobody listening to me? I'm saying all of these words, I think is a bit crucial bit. I think I'm communicating my vision, my mission. I've done all of this work. I've told them. They're not getting it. That butting of heads. Can you give me a bit of a story, an example of how that looks?
All right, let's look at the billboard at the side of the highway. Okay? Companies spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars creating the artwork for billboards, agonizing over every single word, making sure the visual is correct, and they put it by the side of the highway. And hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people drive past it every single day. And 98% of the people don't even know it exists. Because they're busy. They're looking left when they should be looking right. They're concentrating on traffic. They're listening to the radio. They're doing 1,000 different things, and they're not looking up and right at that billboard. Now, over time, you're going to stop at a light, and you may look at it. You may not pay attention to it, but you'll see it. And over time, again, you may look at it and go, oh. And then maybe another 5 or 10 times later, you'll actually sit there and you'll read the billboard, and you'll actually pay attention to it, and you'll actually get what's being said. That's business. We're all busy. We all walk into office every single day with 1,000 things that are going on in our minds, whether it's what happened with the family, their kids, our spouses, our parents. We're worried about the mortgage. We're worried about a particular project at work. We're having difficulty with another coworker. We've got 17 other projects that are going on in our lives. And here comes the CEO saying something else. And a lot of the times that's going to sound like Charlie Brown and the teacher. It's going to sound like the wah, 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 wah. It's one more thing that people have to concentrate on when they're already concentrating on 1,000 other things. So assuming just because you've said something once doesn't really work. It's like spending $100,000 to get the inside front page of the Wall Street Journal, buying a full ad on that thing, and assuming that's the only marketing you ever have to do the rest of your life. It doesn't work. It's communication is about telling the same story over and over again in different ways so it resonates with different people. It's
so funny that you say it like that, because I had this conversation literally 2 days ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the premise was, I can't remember the actual stat details, but I think every second or every 10 seconds we're taking in about 40,000 to 400,000 pieces of information into our brain, and our brain capacity only has 1%
mm-hmm.
of ability to be able to take that information. And how this story came about was I was working with an operations director. We were running through a snag list. So we were working through some details on an email marketing series. Now, how does this relate? Well, he used 2 different words for the same thing throughout this email chain
mm-hmm.
between students and athletes. And I put it on the snag list as can I have a clarity check on this? Because me as a marketeer, I am drilled in to be consistent all the time. So if we're using students at the top of the sales funnel, we're using students at the bottom of the sales funnel. If we're using athletes at the top, we're using athletes at the bottom.
Correct.
Everything is repetition over and over and over of the same thing on every single channel that we're doing. So when you're telling me from then a CEO's job, trying to communicate their language, is that consistency of repetition of this is where we're going, this is how we're saying it, this is what we're doing, saying it over and over and over again. It might feel laborious, but if you go to marketing 101, you've got 7 to 10 touches before that person actually really takes it in, and then is able to do some action with that.
Yeah, I mean, you may have said something 10 times, but the particular person you're talking to might have only heard it once.
I mean, my husband, when he puts his shoes away.
You know what? And we all hear that. And the truth of the matter is, we all have deaf parts of our personality. We all sit there and say we concentrate on the stuff that we think is a priority, and the stuff that says, I get, webinar reminders, and I get 10 webinar reminders for a particular webinar. Most of them I just delete. It's the one 15 minutes beforehand I went, all right, I was going to go to that thing. Okay, yeah, fine, click, on I go. But before that, it wasn't a priority. It wasn't important in my life. I had other things that were far more priority in my life. I had booked off the time. It's in my calendar. I know that the webinar is coming, but I'm not going to read the full diatribe of what they're trying to tell me 8 different times. I don't care. I know they're going to send me one more reminder 15 minutes ahead of time, so that one gets deleted and it's out of my brain so I can concentrate on something else. And we all have those thoughts going through our brain every single day. Is this important to me now? Or when it is important, somebody will remind me. And I think a lot of us have that in our psyche that, you know what, if it's really important, somebody will send me a reminder.
It's true. People, if it's really at the top of their priority list, they'll be on your case every day until it happens so they can take it off their list.
That's right.
So it's then who's getting that priority. Now, we've said a lot there about trying to communicate that vision. And you said it was the CEO. So, but are they the right person to be making the vision? Are they the right person to be doing this?
Well, here's the thing. I've done branding exercises for 28 years. And we had a company that was going right through a branding exercise, and we were a year and a half into a branding exercise. And I said, we need to stop. And they go, what do you mean we need to stop? We're almost done. I said, no, we need to stop. He says, why? You just fired your CEO. I go, your new CEO needs to have their fingerprint on this. And they ignored me. They said, nope, we're going ahead. We're going to do this. And the new CEO will just live. Sure enough, the new CEO came in. I'm not happy with this. I'm not happy with this. We need to redo this. We need to redo this. I don't believe in this vision. I don't think we're going in the right direction. And we ended up having to redo almost a year's worth of work because their mandate, their philosophy, their idea is to be that person that is driving mission, vision, value, and purpose. Now, they may not be the person who's telling the story over and over and over and over again. They may delegate that story, and they should delegate that story. The more the story is told from different points of view, the CFO is going to tell the story from their point of view. The CMO is going to tell the story from their point of view. The COO is going to tell their story from their point of view. The CHRO are going to tell the story from their point of view. But it's all the same story, but they all put this as, this is how it's relevant to my people. This is how it's relevant to my teams. This is how it's relevant to my tribe. And they make it relevant to the people that are doing it. So the same mission, vision, value is interpreted through the language of the various departments to be able to make it relevant to the people that are actually doing the jobs.
I mean, that's nice.
But the CEO should be the person who is helping to formulate, drive, and make sure that message is being told consistently throughout the organization.
I like that was a little bit full circle there, because one of the things that we didn't necessarily touch on just in the first point was that bit of resonating with that vision. And so it's nice that each of the C-suite is then taking that message and just slightly tweaking it into their own terminology and their how is it really going to affect my department. Now we're still saying it's the CEO who's doing the vision. What about the board of directors? What about the founders?
And that's where you sit there and says, are we talking about a $500 million company? Or are we talking about a $5 million company? A $5 million company, your founder and your CEO are the same person. When you're dealing with a $500 million company where you have a board of directors, where you have a CEO, where you have a founder, hopefully your founder and your CEO are, depending on the company, are different people. I look at founders as your visionaries. I look at those are the people that are your big idea people. Those are the people that are sitting there looking at what's next. They're the ones that are looking at saying, okay, they can see the entire chessboard and the 3 other chessboards that are around them. And are they looking at to see how the pieces interact in that 3D chess model? The CEO is the person who's running the ship, who's making sure that particular ship is running smoothly and heading in the right direction. And a founder and a CEO, if they're on the same page, make an incredible team. Now, the board of directors are there to basically be able to look at the overall vision, their overall vision people. But I think that when you're creating mission, vision, value, and purpose, all 3 of them need to be working together to make sure that they are aligned, because if they're not aligned, that's when you're going to create chaos. And that's where you're going to say, well, the CEO saying this thing, the founder saying this thing, the board of directors is coming up with something completely different. People on the floor are going, what do I do now? I'm getting 3 different, sets of comments. If they're not on the same page and if they're not all singing from the same hymnal, we start getting chaos within the company. And that's when companies go from being these phenomenal brands to commodities that are easily replaced and soon forgotten.
Let's dive into that, because I know you've got a huge amount of expertise in merger and acquisitions. So, and I always think they're a beautiful case study when trying to tell stories around it. So, when you're like say you got the founder, CEO, board of directors, they're trying to do a merger and acquisition, but they're having cultural clashes. They are facing resistance to change. Why is that? Why is that so common?
Okay, the first thing is 98% of us are terrified of change in one way, shape, or form. It's just built into our psyche. We're comfortable with what we know. Very few people like to look around corners in the dark. The people like be in the light. They like to sit there and say like to know what's next. They like to be comfortable. That people have habits and routines that they're comfortable with. And when they get pulled out of those habits and routines, there better be a darn good reason why they're doing it, and they need to see the promised land. I'm a big believer of, we're all climbing the mountain together, but here's what you're going to get at the top of the mountain that you can't do now. We're doing this, and it's going to be painful along the way. But as we're doing it for this particular purpose, this particular reason, and here's how you're going to benefit individually when you get to the top of the mountain. And by the way, if we don't get to the top of the mountain, here are the ramifications. Here's what could go wrong. And I find that in a lot of mergers and acquisitions, we worry about the dollars and the cents and the operations, and how do the computer systems come together, and how do the logistics package together, and how many people can we package off because we've got 2 CMOs and 2 CFOs, and how do we put all that together? But we don't factor on the human beings. We don't factor on, there's been a 50,000 person company that've been doing what they're doing and they want to keep doing it, and you have these new 8,000 people that are being brought into the company that we don't know. We don't know, how they work, why they work, what they do, their customers. We don't know, what their skill set is. We don't know what problems they're going to bring to the organization. And how do we bring these people together in a human way to have insights into each other and say, how do we take the best of both of our worlds, and how do we learn from both of our faux pas? How do we bring this together to make the new company a much better company? And you can't just take, and there's a case study on my website if people go to this, but you can't just take these 8,000 people, throw them in a room for 3 days, indoctrinate them with ideology and assume that everything's going to be fine. It can't just be a one and done thing, because if you just do onboarding as a one and done thing where it's just, okay, here's who we are as a company, go. 90% of that information will be lost a week later. It's got to be done as a drip process.
I love the analogy of climbing up the mountain. So I like a good hike. There's a few mountains in the UK, and we have a thing where if we go climb a mountain as a group, we'll have beer and brownies at the top.
I love
now,
it.
If you tell me to climb a mountain and I'm going to have beer and brownies at the top, great. I'm fully motivated at the start of the mountain. Now, mountain takes, in the UK, takes about 6 to 8 hours to climb up and to climb down.
Sure.
In wet, miserable, rainy, cold weather, because it's the UK.
I was about to say, it's UK summer.
It's a UK summer, absolutely. I don't think I took my Google off until I was 15. And so when you get about a quarter of the way, some of the aches and pains are going to come in. I'm going to lose a little bit of motivation. Suddenly I'm halfway up and I can barely see the peak. I can barely see the summit at this point. The clouds are coming in and the back pain is really fully in there at the moment. At that point, I'm going to start to struggle. I'm starting to going to think, oh, is it even worth it? Do I need to come back down again? But then that one friend will go to you and say, hey, no, remember, we've got beer and brownies at the top. We said we were going to do this. We're just going to get pushed through to these different challenges. Here are the different challenges that we've got to face. Hypothermia, getting sick, the rain, cold, the back pains, the everything. You just have to list them off. But that's exactly the same thing of what that business is going to experience. Just need that person to come in and say, no, this is the vision. This is why it's worth it. This is what we have set out to do, and we just got to keep drip feeding that little bit of information as we continuously chip away and we climb to the top. Now, that's obviously very good. I'm hoping the majority of people have climbed a mountain or a hill at some point and will resonate with that. But when it comes to then actually a business, like you said, you've got multiple CEOs, CTOs, CFOs, and you're coming close together. And at the end of the day, like you said, the objective here is to not become so bland that you become so commoditized that you then just disappear. So how do you, it's kind of a two-parter here, how do you keep that team motivated? What are some of those strategies that you can implement, but also motivated to stay innovative, to still think why they're different as these two organizations that come together?
The first thing you need is to understand the difference between leaders and managers. Leadership is about people. Managing is about process. And what we need in this world is far more leaders. And it doesn't matter whether you're CEO or, the first-time manager of a department. You're a leader of people if you choose to be. And it's your job as a leader to get the best out of your team on a daily basis. And it's your job to motivate them and to be able to make sure that they have the skills, the training, the motivation, and the experience that they need to be able to move forward. And it's not about the big accolades at the end of the year. It's about the good job. It's about, what can I do to make your life easier? It's about, we're doing this. I can see that you're having some challenges. Do you need somebody else to step in on this and give you a hand for a couple days? And a good leader understands their team. They understand their strengths. They understand their weaknesses. They understand how they work best individually and how they work best as a team. And at all levels, you need to have those people. And if you don't, that's when you get somebody that is egotistical, they're belligerent, they are blocking, and they create chaos within the organization because they're the ones who create the animosity, mistrust, and the fact that people become unmotivated and disengaged. So if we have good leaders within the organization that understand that their purpose is not about their own self-interest, but the interests of their team, we will do better. And you can't just assume that people are going to be that way just because you've moved them from a skilled position to a leadership position. They need to be, everybody along the way needs to be trained, coached, and mentored. And that takes time, that takes effort, and that takes money. And you need people to mentor each other within the organization, and you need to have a coaching system within the company that enables people to level up. Because everybody can always get better. We can always become better leaders. We can always become better motivators. We can always become better communicators. It takes time. And it's a lifelong process.
So we said about motivators then, having leaders in the business. So when you've got a team that is in a position that they're feeling unmotivated or they're not quite doing the output that is expected, and what would be your first 3 steps when working with this team?
My first question is why? And it's having individual conversations first, and then probably group conversations afterwards. And they're anonymous and they're personal, and they're not blaming, they're not finger pointing. They're like, where are we? What's going on? How are things going? What do you see the challenges going? What would you like to see moving forward? And how do you think we can get from here to this is where we're trying to go. What do you see as the direction, and what do you need from me? And what do you need from your teammates in order to be able to make it? Why are we having these roadblocks? And it's putting both of you on the same side of the desk and having the problem on the other side of the desk. And it's not about confrontation. It's about saying, here's a problem. How do we fix this together? And I think that that's really the biggest thing. And then it comes down to communicating about, okay, we've been doing this in the past. Obviously, this isn't working. Let's go through an idea stage of how we can move from here to there. Great. Now it's a matter of saying, okay, who within this group is going to be in charge of this? And what it is, it's about empowering people. If you can empower people within the organization to step up and take their own sense of leadership and be able to give them their own sense of destiny, where they don't feel that they're being mandated to, that everything is being dictated to, they're willing to change. And sometimes this happens very quickly. Sometimes this happens over months and sometimes years. It all depends how protracted it is. It all depends where you're walking into as a leader within the situation. You know, you could have two people within this group that hate each other, that absolutely, for one reason or another, hate each other, are in competition, and are bringing down the whole group. Well, it might mean moving one. It might mean firing both. It might mean retraining them. You don't know what the situation is and why the problem exists. And until you can understand what the problem is, you can't fix it.
There was a really good example of, obviously it's not in business, but this was in film. Two actors, Rachel Adams and Ryan Gosling, on The Notebook. They were just classically known for screaming in each other's faces, just absolutely clashing. Literally hated each other to the point that Ryan Gosling asked the director, I can't work with this person. Can we have somebody new? Now, it never divulged actually what changed, but then they suddenly started dating and were together for 3 years. You know. And it is amazing how you can go from that absolute pure hatred and clashing with people to then suddenly some things are actually closer together than we actually realise.
Yeah.
But that obviously worked out quite well for the movie, and worked out really well for them, and now they're good friends. But how do you know when you've got a team and you've got one person that looks to be perceiving to be chaotic and unmotivated, when they should be staying in the team and when they should be leaving the team and restructuring that way? Well,
the first thing to do is it perceiving, is the person that actually everybody perceives to be the problem, are they the problem? Sometimes it's that person's boss. Sometimes it's that person's boss's boss. Sometimes it's a situation that they're in. Sometimes this person feels frustrated that they don't feel listened to. They don't feel valued. They don't feel, that there's a sense of purpose. They don't feel that they're given a chance for advancement. They don't feel that they're being given a fair shake. And sometimes it's true. Sometimes it's, sometimes the problem is not where it looks obvious that it is. I mean, there's classic ideas in 1,000 different companies where they fire somebody because they think it's a problem, and 6 months later, the problem is still there. And that happens all the time. And I think a good leader is willing to sit there and say, wait a second, is it this person? And if it is, okay, we'll deal with it. And if it's not, where it is, I had to have the uncomfortable conversation with the CEO that it was his wife. It was this guy's wife who didn't work for the company, but she would come in and she would bark at people and demand stuff and throw her weight around, and nobody felt that they could do anything because she was the boss's wife. And I said, look, you have two choices, and this, it's your business or your marriage. You have the choice, and you can deal with it whichever way you want to. But I keep saying, if she keeps doing this and she keeps coming in and stepping in online where she's not supposed to be, you're going to keep losing good people, because they're not going to put up with this. because they know they're not going to win. If it's between them and your wife, you're in an untenable situation. So you need to choose as a CEO what you want to do about this. If you want me to have the unpleasant conversation with about it, and you can turn around and fire me, that's fine. You can do that. But I will have that conversation with her if you want. But what ended up happening was having that conversation, and it was a very uncomfortable conversation, and it was a very tenuous conversation, but things started getting better. And but it wasn't the person that everybody thought it was. This person was creating havoc. Well, no, this person felt that they were totally and absolutely trapped because they're being given unrealistic expectations by somebody who doesn't even work for the company.
I'm speechless. You've actually got me there. Like, I would love to have been a fly on the wall in that conversation. On, it's something that you'd never wish somebody to ever be in that situation. You just never wish that on a person, even your worst enemies. But I'm glad to hear that there was a level. There wasn't so much of an ego, that the CEO was clearly able to listen and to be able to take on that kind of the reality.
Mm-hmm.
He probably, and I'll even probably go as far to say he probably already knew it. He already knew, but that's a
guarantee.
That's something you definitely as a human don't want to face. You'd want to protect yourself from that kind of scenario. And like you said, you just came in. It was just like, no, I'm going to put a hard stop here. It is your time's due. You've got to go face this challenge if you're going to aspire to that goal that you want to get. Now, I would love your opinion on this. So it came out very recently, and this is very highly topical at the moment because Amazon have just asked all of their staff to come back into 5 days, and he's not an outlier in asking this. Elon Musk has asked the same of all of his different companies. There was the Zoom CEO also asked that of all of his employees, and it came out as well that the Airbnb CEO has a test. It's called the Keeper test.
Yes.
It's all related to this, I'm going to say, a little bit of lack of trust when it comes to giving the accountability and responsibility of your team and trying to motivate them. Now, the Keeper test, he asks his leaders or managers a question about their team, and he goes through each of the members of the team and he asks, if from all the information that you know now of your employee that you've been working with, would you highly recommend them for another company? Say that you were the CEO of another company. Would you highly recommend them to go and work in a different organization, or would you let them go for these amount of reasons? It was that kind of question. Now, I'm paraphrasing slightly. I'd love your opinion. I'll put mine out there first, if that's okay.
Sure.
My knee-jerk reaction was, I can see the thought process behind it, because you're getting that little bit of qualitative data on how that leader perceives their employee, or that team member, I should say. But there's two things. Was, well, who's doing that Keeper test to the leaders? Is it because are they actually being leaders, or are they being managers? And then also, when it comes to perception, there is so much unconscious bias that can cloud our judgments when it comes to the perception of people. Just exactly what you were saying about you fire somebody by mistake because you don't actually get to the root cause of it. So the real question is it a fair enough test to find out if your team is actually the right people in the right seats? Well,
here's something I just read. I can't remember if it's Fast Company Inc. or Forbes, and somebody's going to have to fact check me on this. It was a perception of how do 85% of managers think that employees do not work up to standards when they work from home, and 85% of employees feel that they are overburdened at work. That there's too much to do, that they're stressed and stuff. So here's the reality. It's somewhere in the middle. Perception is in the eye of the beholder. We all perceive things based on our own bias. And we need to realize that every single one of us have an unconscious bias. And just because you would recommend somebody for a job, would 8 other person recommend somebody for that same job? If you asked 10 people around, if you asked 10 people within the company whether that person should be recommended for the job, you're going to get a far better sense of whether that person is actually a good person or not than if you ask one. Because the question is, how does that person, is that person threatening the other person? Like, do they feel threatened by somebody below them, and they go, Jesus, if I recommend this person, what does it say about me, and that that I'm not doing my job, and all the headspace that goes along with that. And the question is, where does reality lie? In the 5 days a week, there's a whole myriad of factors that are going into that, including all these CEOs and these companies are paying millions and billions of dollars for office space that's not being used. They've got desks, they got phones, they got, systems, they got, all of this type of stuff that's not being used. And they're sitting there going, geez, where's the ROI? We need to have our people in the office so we can justify all this space because we've got a 25-year lease on this place. I personally, me, I think a hybrid work is the best. Whether it's a 2-3 or a 3-2, I think that people work best, that there's great time where you come into the office, there's idea stations, you get to know your fellow employees, you work as a team, you elevate each other, you motivate each other, that's great. But we all need time where it's quiet time, where we can sit there and actually do the deep work. And reality is, when you're in the office, somebody's always asking, can I interrupt you? Somebody's always standing over your desk. Somebody, is constantly asking you to go out for coffee or meet you at the water cooler, or having these side conversations that have nothing to do with work. So you're probably only working 2 to 2.5 hours a day when you're in the office, because you're being interrupted all the time, and it takes you forever to get back into deep thought. So.
Well, and what's great about what you just said there is there's a level of, like, you could be listening to that and thinking, wow, that's so negative. Like, what's even the point of being in the office? When if I was at home 400% of the time, you could be in deep focus work all of the time and their product levels would be up. That could be a thought process you could be thinking there, because why would I be paying somebody to do 2.5 hours worth of work? Well, the numbers fail to recognize, the ROI or the ROAS is having that face-to-face personal interaction to build relationships. So when you have hard and difficult conversations, it's not a you against me situation. It's, okay, we have a difference of opinion here, but we both want the same thing, because we wouldn't be having this disagreement if we weren't so passionate about trying to solve this problem or challenge together. It's far more easier to navigate those little nuances if you've spent that quality face-to-face time.
Well, it's also the fact that mentorship doesn't happen. It doesn't happen well remotely. Mm-hmm. Neither does the ability to be able to watch what other people are doing and be able to see how your boss and your boss's boss act, to be able to sit there and say, okay, I need to emulate that if I want to get to the next level. And there's all sorts of little things that most of us don't even realize happen inside of an office that allows for people to become better at who they are and what they do. If all we're doing is stuck at a monitor all day, and all we're doing is coding or marketing, or all we're doing is we're doing the actual work, we're only as good as the last thing that we did, because we're not willing to change, because we're going to keep doing what we've always done. That's why you go to conferences. That's why why there's training. That's why there's boardroom sessions, because we is always better than me. There is always better. We are always smarter as in a collective. We are always more creative in the collective. We are always more elevated in our thought process in the collective. And there's value to being in the office because of that. Yeah, there may be conversations around the water cooler, but those water cooler conversations can create an idea that could spark a $10 million solution. And you don't know because you weren't together and you weren't talking. And I think that there has to be the time for the deep work, but there also has to be the time for rumination. And I think rumination happens best together.
Yeah. You put different brains, you put different I love that we're coming to a beautiful close right now, summarizing everything. When everybody's together, everybody's actively listening, you get the different perceptions of the same problem and angle. So then collectively to come together, okay, we've got something more robust to go forward as a vision, and we're all on the same page here of which direction that we're going. And like you said, when we're all on the same page and we've got the same vision in our heads, and we've got that level of feeling of responsible and accountable for our area, then you are more likely to be steamboating the same way, the same direction.
I mean, I'll stop with one last story. This is Dove. Dove, do you guys know Dove?
Yes.
Dove the brand.
Dove's,
okay.
Yep,
Dove is famous for their women empowerment ads.
Mm-hmm.
They've been doing the women empowerment ads for forever, and they do them extremely well. But they did this one ad that fell so flat. I didn't think they were ever going to do another women empowerment ad again, where they did women taking off sweaters and another woman appears. And the problem was the way they cut it. It went from a black woman taking off a sweater to the last person being a white woman. And that wasn't how they filmed it, but that's the way it was cut. And because of that, the perception was that a white woman is better than a black woman, and a white woman is prettier than a white. And this is what went on through social. This is not just me. This is what went through millions of. And that ad got cut in 24 hours. It was perception. And if you had a whole bunch of people within a room looking at this, hopefully one person would have raised their hand and went, hang on here. But because that ad might have been shown to 15 different executives as a video on a conference, here's the ad, take a look at it, give me your points. They went, yep, that looks good. Yep, that looks good. Yep, that looks good. And it got greenlit. But there wasn't the time for rumination to sit there and say, wait a second, is there anything that we're missing here? And I think that's what communication does. It gives us the pause to say, what are we missing and how can we do this better?
And I think it gets amplified. That got amplified even more because a part of Dove's, I'm calling it brand, repeated message is Dove is for every size of woman, every color of woman, every ethnicity, and they always championed. This is how strong their brand is, because I'm just off the bat regaling this. They've always championed that everybody is completely different, but we are one to use Dove and make us feel amazing.
And we're all beautiful together.
And we're all beautiful together, exactly. Yeah. And then that one little, we literally said at the very start, before we started recording the podcast, about sweating the small stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a thing that needed to be sweated in order for it to not majorly flop. And it's a shame, because it does seem like a very innocent mistake, that one, because it's so easily done, that one, so easily done.
And it was made by some editor who was just cutting film.
Yeah. So on that note, Ben, tell us more about how people can get in contact with you, how people can find you and ask you more questions than I've asked you today.
Oh, it's really simple. The best place for people to get in touch with me is at yourbrandmarketing.com. That's yourbrandmarketing.com. There's people who can book a 30-minute call with me to have a conversation about projects, of what they're thinking and where their challenges are. Links to all my social media is there. There's my ebooks there. There's free chapters of my 2 books are there. Links to my podcasts, thought analogies of different stuff. Everything is there. It's a repository. So I'm an open book. My attitude is give people as much information to let them have the know, like, and trust. And then let's come and talk about your specific issues, because everything that's there is in the aggregate. Your challenges are your challenges and are not the same as somebody else's. So let's talk about how we can move the needle for you.
Perfect. That will make sure that then the link in the bio, everybody out, this will be going out onto obviously social media so people can keep finding you and find all of these absolute nuggets of information that we've gone through today. Because I think everything we spoke about, every business experiences this at some point or the other. And you're the guide to help them find out, well, which ones do we need to sort now? Which are going to be our priorities? So in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, you're going to get to the goal that you are looking for as a business.
Exactly. Charlie, thank you for having me. Thank you for being a conduit for your audience and your tribe. And thank you for adding value.
Have a great day. Speak to you soon.